Hey everyone, it's Choppyreviewer again. Now, I've gotten some questions about my Dark Vengeance review I did a while ago. Somebody asked me to recommend a 1,000 point army for them, because apparently their game shop does 1,000 point armies, and he got the Dark Vengeance box set, and he's going to be using the Space Marines. So, to help out, I'm going to give my opinion on a few army choices that he could do with this unit. Now, just so you know, I do have the Codex for the Space Marines, Grey Knights, Black Templar, Space Wolves, and the Blood Angels. Unfortunately, I don't have Dark Angels. I've had trouble finding it. And besides, I think a new one's coming out soon, so I might just wait for that one. But for the purposes of this army list that I'm going to be giving you, I'm going to go with the basic Space Marines. Now, if anybody else has recently gotten the Dark Vengeance box set, you're not going to get that limited edition Chaplain. Unless you go on eBay or something, you're not going to be able to get this guy. So I'm going to leave him out of the list on this army. Now the box set comes with one champion, one librarian, one tactical marine squad with the special weapon of a plasma gun and a heavy weapon of a plasma cannon, a Terminator squad with an assault cannon and chain fist, and a bike squad with one member using a plasma gun. Now, if you're just going with this basic units and just giving them upgrades that their models visibly have, this army is going to rack about 765 points. But with upgrades and using a special character from the Space Marine Codex, I was able to figure out a way on how to bump this up to 1,000 points. But there is some problems with this basic army. And I'm just going to throw this out there real quick. Based on the rules, you won't be able to use this army in a traditional tournament unless characters kind of bend the rules a little bit, because, and I'm going to get a little bit technical on this for anybody who doesn't know much about the Warhammer 40k tabletop, you are required to have one HQ unit that's pretty much the leader unit. In this case, it is going to be the librarian and the champion, aka the captain, since I'm using the Space Marine Codex. And you're required to have two troop choices. This box set only has one troop choice, with the Tactical Marine Squad. Now, although you could split them up into 2 5s, you won't be able to use their special weapons, so you'll have to pretend they're basic bolters. But I think most game stores and most players won't really care about that role when you're using this box set. And if you do run into somebody that's that picky, don't play with them anyway, because they're just going to be annoying. And real quick, I just want to go into how players generally spec out their units. We could go with the basic, what you see is what you get. Meaning that the equipment the characters are using are visibly shown on their models. It's the easiest way to tell which character is using what, so nobody gets confused during the game. There's another rule that people generally use, which I use a lot, which is called play as. Essentially, you're pretending a model has something that is not visually shown on them. People do this because maybe they ran out of pieces, or they couldn't afford the specific bits they needed. So they'll pretend a weapon the character's having is something else, or they're using different equipment that's not visibly shown on the character. But as long as you make it clear to your opponent what each character is using and what each weapon is being used as, it's normally perfectly fine. Again, if you run into somebody that's really picky about that, don't play with them anyway. They're just going to be annoying. Okay, now enough stalling. Let's get into how I was able to figure out how to make this army a 1,000-point army. First, we'll move on to the champion, who's going to be our captain. In fact, not just a regular captain. He's going to be the special independent character, Cato Sicarius. Now, this guy packs in a lot of points at 200 points, but he is a very good unit. But when using him with an army this small at only 1,000 points, you have to keep this guy protected. Because if he goes down, that's 1/5 of your entire army right there. And since we have a librarian here, he's going to be our second HQ choice. You can't have any more than that unless you have some special rules. And we're going to beef this guy up a bit. First, we're giving him an upgrade called Epistolary. I think that's how you say it. And since this entire army is pretty big on plasma weapons, we're also going to give him a Combi Bolter, preferably a Combi Plasma. But you could give him a Combi Melta or Flamer if you want. And that's going to kick him up to 165 points. Next, you got the Tactical Squad, which I split up in half. Oh, and please try to ignore the paint jobs. I was kind of doing weird stuff with these guys. This is your basic tactical squad. Your 5-man squad. That's the minimum you have. With the sergeant having the plasma pistol. I know it looks like he has a bolter or bolt pistol right there, but kind of customized him because I was trying to make a special character. Now that's what I did with that half of the squad. The second half, I'm turning into a Stern Guard squad. They're pretty much a veteran squad who specialize in long-range combat. That's where we have our plasma cannon and plasma gun. And these 3 guys, we're giving them all commie bolters. Personally, I really like the Stern Guard squad. They're best used as ranged units, and each of them could either have a commie weapon or up to 2 special weapons, which is why we put the plasma gun and the plasma cannon with this squad. Next, we have our Terminator squad, with our unit using the assault cannon and the chain fist. And we're going to use a play as rule by giving these guys also chain fist. So you have 4 chain fists and assault cannon, and you got your leader right there. And finally, we got the bike squad, with the member using the plasma gun. And again, we'll use the play as rule by giving the sergeant, the one using the chainsword, we're going to make that chainsword a power sword. And this is what it looks like to have that 1,000 point force. And that's the best way I was able to figure out on how to make this army a 1,000 point army by only using the Space Marines that are in the Dark Vengeance box set. Now, is it a good army? Well, you have to be really smart when playing this army. Because the problem I have in so many upgrades and a very powerful HQ character is that whenever you lose a character, it becomes a very big blow because each of them costs so many points. And they could easily be overtaken by a horde army. So you have to play really smart. Now, I have 2 more army choices for you, but you would have to spend a little bit extra money for this. Okay, maybe not a little bit extra money because Game Workshops is not cheap. Now, these next 2 armies, you're going to probably end up spending close to $70 to $80. But if you're really serious about this, I think it would help out much more. Now, to start off, and to make things simple on the battlefield, we're going to try to use the what you see is what you get rule as much as we can. Now, we'll start off with this guy again. We're going to make him a regular captain, but we're also going to give him a power sword since the sword he's using looks really nice. And if you didn't tell, he has a combi plasma bolter right in the back, so we're going to give him both of those. Still a somewhat effective HQ unit, but a lot cheaper than Cato Sicarius. Now moving on to the Librarian. This little guy, we're not going to give him any upgrades. He's just going to be the basic Librarian. Still effective though. And then the Terminator squad, the only change we have to these guys is we're not upgrading the rest of them with Chain Fist. Only the one guy that has the visible Chain Fist will have the Chain Fist. Everybody else will just have what they got there. And our bike squad, well, the sergeant's not going to have his power weapon anymore. He's just going to have a chainsword. Now that we've freed up those points, what I recommend you get? I would recommend a second tactical squad. This is a basic squad with the free upgrades, such as the flamer and the missile launcher, or heavy bolter or multi-melta. And you can get those free as long as you keep them with a squad of 10. This guy should be turned around. And we still have a few more extra points. And with these few extra points, we'll just split the army into either a sit down and shoot ranged army or a slightly more mobile army. Meaning you can spend all the rest of the points on a basic Predator tank without any upgrades. Now he still has a very nice autocannon which could do some good long range damage. So as long as you keep him away from heavy weapons, he could do a good amount of damage. And if you're willing to do the play as rule and weaken some of your other squads, such as taking away some of the plasma weapons, some of the power weapons, you could use those extra points to further upgrade your Predator or any other units. And with those 3 points, what you could do is add some heavy bolter sponsoons to the side of the Predator, which will really beef up his firepower. And or you could even make this power weapon that your captain has into a relic blade, which would increase his strength. Now, if you were to buy these extra models that I recommend, you could do any one of these combinations. You could test them out, play them, see what works best for you. Now, on the other side of that, let's pretend you didn't take the Predator, but instead, you decided to take a Rhino, or Razorback is a transport unit. Now this is the Razorback model. It comes with some heavy weapons up top, which really help out with range damage, but it doesn't carry many units. If you like, you can use a cheaper Rhino, which most people will just do this anyway. So I recommend buying a Razorback and then using it as a Rhino, since it'll give you the option to pretend it's either or. And this could help make a squad mobile, so you have more mobility, which you can use to get at least one squad into position to take out your enemies. And if you were to go this route, you would still be left with 30 points to distribute amongst upgrades throughout the rest of your squads. Again, you could upgrade the power sword for your captain into a relic blade if you like. Instead of using the free weapons for your second tactical squad, you could upgrade it to the more powerful weapons such as the las cannon or melt-a-gun. Or even upgrade the Rhino. Give them the little dozer blades, make it a Razorback, and you could actually upgrade these heavy bolters into twin-link glass cannons or heavy flamers or whatever you like. In fact, you could probably buy the Predator, and you could just take the top off the Predator and pretend it's a Rhino if you decide to go that way. And this is how that other army will look if you decide to go with buying a new tactical squad and a Predator or Razorback/Rhino if you want to go that way. Personally, I think this army is the better choice. Now these are just some options. I know you asked me for like a specific 1,000 point army, but unless you played a lot of games, you're not really sure what kind of army you will have fun with. So I'm trying to give you something that will give you a few options so you could try it out, see if you like it, and if you don't like it, try it a different way. So I know I've been doing a lot of talking. Let me show you some of the sheets just to make it more clear for you. Now we have that first army that had Cato Sicarius and the Librarian, coming in at 200 and 165 points respectively. Then you have your Stern Guard and Terminator units for your elites, with 3 combi weapons, Plasma Gun, Plasma Cannon, 4 Chain Fists, and Assault Cannon, coming in at 160 points and 250 points. Then you had your 1 tactical squad of 5 units, with only a Plasma Pistol as upgrade for your Sergeant. And then you have your Bike Squad with a Plasma Gun and a Power Sword, running you at about 120 points. Now my second choice, which I believe to be the superior choice, has your captain using only a power sword and a combi bolter, and your basic librarian, running you at about 125 and 100 points respectively. Then we have the Terminator squad with 1 chain fist and assault cannon, putting you at 235 points for that squad. Now we have 2 full tactical squads, one with a plasma pistol, plasma gun, and plasma cannon, putting you at 200 points. The other with the free flamer and the free heavy bolter / multi-melta / missile launcher, putting you at 170 points on that squad. Then we have our basic bike squad with a plasma gun, putting you at 105 points. And then finally the Predator, putting you at the final 60 points of that army. And then of course we have the mobile choice, which everything else is pretty much the same, except we have the Rhino, putting you at 35 points, leaving you with some extra points to distribute amongst your army. Now I really hope this has been helpful. I don't know how effective these armies would be. I haven't used this kind of army before. I just kind of put these up at the top of my head. I'm not entirely sure how effective these armies would be for your kind of playstyle. Give them a shot. If you're really tight on cash, I understand. Go that one really small, high point value army. See what you like, see if you really need to buy more units. And just kind of get a feel for the game before you actually commit to anything. Now this was using the basic Space Marine army. I'm not entirely sure what the upgrade costs and the point values are for Dark Angels if you want to make Dark Angels, but I like to assume that it's fairly close. So even if you did end up buying these extra units, you could probably work out a way to make your 1,000 points without going over or under. So anyway, I hope that helps. Those have been my opinions. Take them for what they're worth.